Hi, all. I'm Mary, and I live a life that's just like Harry Potter. Unfortunately, there's no giant with a kind heart in my life, and there's no magic. But hopelessness, well, maybe. I don't remember my parents at all. You see, I was adopted by my aunt. She doesn't really like to talk about my mom and dad, and I don't know why. A funny thing is, she's got a lot of photos of my dad, and she really likes to flip through them when she thinks I'm not looking. And yeah, this woman is really my aunt, my dad's younger sister. She adopted me after my parents fell victim to an aviation accident. They say my mom and dad were returning home from a business trip, and their plane fell into the ocean. I don't know that for sure, though. No one really tells me anything. Being an adopted child isn't actually that bad. Yeah, you often feel sad without your parents, and you miss them even if you don't really know them. Still, I'm not even the only adopted child in my class. There are 3 more orphans there, and all of them look quite happy. I'd be happy too if my adopted family was okay. Unfortunately, they're not. I've got 3 brothers, and all of them are older than me. They are all rowdy bullies who are fond of messing things up, and no one really protects me from their antics. My aunt apparently doesn't mind them. She's okay when they're making a mess in the kitchen or scatter their dirty clothes all over the house. You see, I'm the one who keeps everything in order. I clean the house, I help my aunt to care for her stubborn lawn, I do grocery shopping, and I'm not even allowed to keep the spare change. At least Cinderella had her fairy godmother to help her with all that stuff, and I have no one. My whole day is crammed with numerous duties. I go to school, then I go do homework, and then I do all the chores. Sometimes my aunt works late, and I have to cook for all 3 sons. I don't really like cooking, but they still make me do it. If everything goes okay, in the evening I just fall asleep exhausted. I don't even have any dreams because I'm so consistently tired. Still, sometimes it gets worse. From time to time, my brothers break into my room and ruin my notebooks and all of my other stuff, and I can't do anything about it. There are 3 of them, they're older than me, and my aunt always takes their side. During the weekends, nothing changes too much. Of course, I don't have to go to school, but the list of chores grows even longer. I've forgotten to tell you where I live. Once again, Harry Potter vibes incoming. My room is in the cupboard under the stairs. There's no dirt or dust or spiders or anything bad there, though. But still, my brothers live in a nice, comfy rooms on the 1st floor, and I've got the place under the stairs. No justice, there's none at all. Well, with a life like that, I had to get used to the taste of injustice. I don't even have someone to complain to. I told the officials at school all about these horrors I endure. I told everything to my neighbors, and I even contacted the child services. But no one agreed to help me. All those people keep telling me that I'm just making things up and my foster family's great. Yet that's all one big fat lie. I don't even have a smartphone, yet all of my classmates use phones, and I've got nothing. My whole life is work, 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 both at home and at school. My aunt is a horrible person, and my cousins are obnoxious bullies. I don't really know how to break away from this nightmare. Right now, I'm just waiting to be old enough to escape this horrible family once and for all.
Hi all, I'm Susan, Mary's aunt, and I can easily relate to Harry Potter's uncle and aunt, if their foster son was as bad as my girl. My elder brother was always my best friend. He was the one who really brought me up, not our parents and certainly not the numerous babysitters they used to hire. Our age difference wasn't even that big. He was only 5 years older than me. But when you're just a kid, those 5 years could really make a difference, you see. Our mom and dad were constantly busy. Their jobs occupied all their time. They left my brother and me to babysitters. Those nannies kept us safe and sound, but they never actually bothered to teach us. So it was my brother who actually taught me to read, write, and later on, helped me with home tasks. I got used to him always being nearby, ready to help me in any possible way. Somehow I got lucky, met a nice man and married him at a young age. I bore my husband 3 sons, and my brother was always near to help us. He taught my kids, went fishing with my boys and husband, and was almost a full-blown member of our family. Of course, I hoped that someday my brother would find a love of his own. No, I really enjoyed his company, but he did so much to make me happy, so naturally I wanted him to become happy as well. I was sure that my brother really deserved to be happy. My brother found his true love when my youngest son turned 2. My brother's young lady was a really nice girl, a blue-eyed beauty, calm and gentle. Soon she got pregnant, and in a year, she bore him Mary. Mary was a little jewel of our big family, and all of us really loved that girl. Unfortunately, my brother's happiness didn't last long. It seemed like his life was just getting started. His business grew. He bought a house and learned to be a really good dad. But then a disaster struck. My brother and his wife flew home from another conference, but their plane crashed in the middle of the ocean. No one survived. The insurance paid off, and that was it. Funny thing is, I was really glad that Mary got sick just before my brother's flight, and he left her at home. I really wanted to protect that child, to raise her as a good person in my brother's memory. Unfortunately, I loved her too much, and that was my undoing. So first of all, I adopted my niece. That was quite a simple task. I had all the papers, and no one was actually against it. I knew that it would be hard for my husband and I to take care of 4 kids, but I could do nothing else. Mary was my niece, my brother's only daughter. At first, the girl cried a lot and constantly called for her mommy. I spent countless nights near her bed, catering to her wishes, helping her. My own children were left to nannies and babysitters. Still, the boys didn't complain. Instead, they pitied their little adopted sister. Unfortunately, I was overprotective, and I really spoiled the poor child. Mary was quite used to being the family's greatest treasure. So when I tried to finally assign her some tasks, she took it as a personal insult. When Mary was 6, she was already a spoiled kid. When she wanted something, she did everything she could to get it, no matter what. She held no responsibility for anything. Instead, she was always trying to portray herself as a victim. When she was 10, I tried to involve her into chores. Well, she kind of complied. But in response, she made up the story of a poor adopted girl. Since that moment, she grew fond of portraying herself as a stepmother's little Cinderella, no matter what we did. Mary lived in the best room of our house. She even chose the wallpaper herself. But my niece always told everyone that we made her live in the cupboard under the stairs. When I asked her to wash dishes, she made up stories of how we forced her to do all the chores, and so on and so forth. There are no freeloaders in our house. Everyone does what he or she can. My boys, for example, always do their fair share of work and never complained about it. But Mary told the neighbors stories about her being the only human being in the house who was actually involved in doing chores. According to my niece's stories, all of us were heartless monsters, and she was the poor, exploited child. Worst thing is, we live in a small town. Mary's stories really damaged our reputation. The neighbors started looking at us sideways. The kids tried to bully my boys at school. Even Child Protective Services got involved. Of course, we proved that Mary was making everything up, but that costed us dearly. To this day, I don't know what to do with that girl. The therapist advised to be strict with her, but that didn't work. Besides, I can't be strict with that kid. She's my niece. I love her, and I don't want to make her suffer even a little bit. I really hope that Mary would finally grow up and understand that her life is actually pretty okay, that we love her and that she's really making things up. Maybe then she'd be able to calm down, if even just for a bit. I don't even want to think about her future if she keeps acting the way she is now.
Hi all, I'm Nicole, and my best friend betrayed me. Whatever happens, happens, that's true, but her betrayal had almost ruined my entire life. When Judy and I were kids, we weren't even friends, to be honest. We just studied in the same class and almost never communicated all throughout elementary school. But when we got transferred into middle school, both of us ended up in the same class with no other former classmates around. We knew nobody there except each other. That's why we banded together. In a few years, our forced friendship turned into a real one. Judy became my first and very best friend. We shared all of our secrets and spent a lot of time talking about all sorts of things. I remember we even used to do our homework together. It was so much faster that way. But then there was a certain competition, and everything went downhill from there. At the time, we were almost high schoolers. It was our last year in middle school, and I really wanted to get into university early. Yet my chances were slim, even after 2 years in high school. I could become a university student, you see, but my parents, well, they couldn't afford it. And then there was a very special competition dedicated to this rare event. Each of the competitors had to present his or her own project, defend it, and receive a score for a future university application. And the winners received free places at various prestigious colleges and universities. Such competitions are often held exclusively for math classes, where every pupil is a huge nerd. Yet this competition was a free-for-all, and I felt lucky to be able to participate. I was not really into math, you see, yet foreign languages and literature were totally my things. Judy and I met face-to-face when it turned out that both of us chose foreign languages as a preferred area of study. At least we weren't rivals. I aimed for Dutch, while Judy's focus was Spanish. The competition included a number of tasks. First of them was an essay, or even just a small story written in a previously chosen language. Then each of us had to write a test, and the final round concluded with a live discussion with a native speaker. So both of us started frantically writing. We knew that the competition's winner received a free education at any university of his or her choice, even abroad. The stakes were so high. As always, Judy and I worked on the first task together. Both of us understood that the essay thing was pretty serious business, so we didn't tell anything about the plot of our essays to each other. Of course, we discussed some points and even laughed at some moments, but that was it. I was the one who finished with that task first. I did think about waiting for Judy, but then decided that I didn't want to waste any more time. I submitted my work to the competition committee and moved on to the next task. And when I was done with all of the tasks, I just waited for the final results to be published. And then a true miracle happened. On the day the results were announced, my mother and aunt came to school with me to provide some extra support. Instead of helping me to cope with the defeat, they were there to congratulate me. It was decided that I was the sole winner of the competition. I had won. And, judging by the scores, my work was the very best indeed. I felt so happy. They gave me all the papers, published my essay in the school newspaper, and even got a souvenir photo with our headmaster. That was the happiest day of my life. I'm embarrassed to say I was so overjoyed I even forgot to call Judy and ask about her score. Well, she told me everything the next day by herself, and not in a very good manner. My classmates were congratulating me on the victory when Judy stormed into class and started yelling at me. According to her, I was a thief and a fraud, and she was disqualified because of my trickery. I was shocked by her behavior, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. When they finally calmed Judy down, they brought both of us to the headmaster and told me what this all was about. It turns out that Judy got disqualified and accused of plagiarism. You see, our essays were almost identical, and she was telling everyone that it was my fault. Of course, no one actually believed her, yet I still felt so hurt. Judy and I were friends, best friends, after all, and now she was trying to accuse me of her own problems? But still, she never actually stopped accusing me, even now, even though the competition committee proved that she was wrong. From then on, Judy hated me and did everything she could to bring me harm. She even brought her accusations to our local newspaper, and the newspaper editors made an article all about it. It was Judy's most successful attempt to ruin my life, and she almost fully succeeded. Due to that article full of lies and gossip, some people thought that I was to blame and that I was a thief and a horrible person. I tried to explain myself, but everything only got worse. Because of that stupid article, people believed that Judy's accusations were true and started to harass me. Some wrote me letters wishing me death and demanding me to surrender my victory to Judy, and a few even started stalking me. Somehow I overcame that nightmare and didn't surrender my victory. And soon the crowd's attention turned to some other topic. All but Judy and some of her friends forgot about our feud. And when the time was due, I got on a plane and flew far away to Germany to study at one of the country's oldest universities. I still have no idea where Judy ended up. For several years straight, I was the victim of her lies. Yet I hold no ill will towards her. I sincerely wish her to be successful and to have her dreams come true.
I'm Judy, and this is a story about the greatest disappointment in my life. Because of that, I know for sure, you just can't trust anyone. even your closest friends. You see, I really considered Nicole my closest friend. I even told her my greatest wish. I dreamed to move to Europe and become a famous author. I started writing novels when I was just a schoolgirl, and I knew I had a talent for that. Even our literature teacher told me that I had a great future. But at one moment, Nicole decided to act as a copycat. She was sure that she could too become important and famous by writing stories. Well, she called those essays and even novels. But in fact, those were just crude fanfics and nothing more. You see, Nicole was never that much into literature. Her highest grade in the subject was a B-, and that's only because our teacher took pity on her. So at first, I decided that my friend was joking by faking my achievements. Well, I was always a kind girl, so instead of becoming angry, I was actually glad. It's always good when you have more things in common with your friends, isn't it? So I decided to help Nicole with her writing. I was her voluntary editor. I told her how to write, what metaphors to use, how to make a plot, how to build characters, and so on and so forth. I had really high hopes for that competition. If I won, my greatest dream would be close to becoming reality. Some publishers might have noticed me and maybe allowed me to publish my works. I was so excited that I didn't suspect a thing when Nicole offered to work together on the first task. Well, we were already used to making home tasks together, so there's that. It was so foolish of me to discuss my essay with Nicole. I've told her not only about the small details, I've actually told her about the plot of my work. Well, don't forget, I considered her to be a trusted friend after all. Besides, the discussions were often quite useful. You never know what new ideas you get from those. Somehow, Nicole managed to finish her work first. At the moment, I was even proud of her. I was sure that the lessons I taught her weren't in vain, but in reality, she submitted her work first, so that I would never be able to prove to the committee that she stole my ideas. And I never suspected anything until they summoned me to the principal. The members of the committee disqualified me, accused me of plagiarism, and prohibited me to enter similar competitions ever again. And they showed me Nicole's work as proof. I was genuinely shocked. It was my work. It was the concept on which I spent several years. All the details, all the characters, all the plot twists. Everything got blatantly stolen. I felt as if my life's work was taken from me. I was literally devastated. Nicole never even cared to change the names of my characters. Our works had only a couple of differences, and those were the details and plot hooks I made after Nicole submitted her work, and we stopped our cooperation. I tried to prove that I was right. I showed the committee my phone notes that I made years before the competition, but no one believed me. I was kicked out. That's how Nicole was declared the winner of the competition with my work. And that's what you call justice? Of course I took my revenge. I never pitied my former friend. I actually took joy in people harassing her, haunting her, telling her to die in disgrace. Well, at first, I kinda hoped that she confessed her guilt and surrendered her win to me. Of course I was wrong, because Nicole had no shame, so I just enjoyed the true justice. Now, I finally became successful. Soon after I graduated from school, I made a contract with a publisher, and they've recently published my third book. So now I'm pursuing my career as an author, and concurrently studying at the university. It's not the university of my dreams, yet it's a very respectable one, and I'm still sure that Nicole's horrible actions will hit her one day.
Hey guys, I'm Evelyn, and boy do I have a grudge against my parents. You see, they have 2 daughters, my sister and myself, yet clearly they only love one of us, and obviously it ain't me. Mom and Dad have long considered me an unlucky child, and, well, I guess that's kind of true. I'm not beautiful by any margin, and not even cute. My quick thinking also left much to be desired. For example, the neighbors' children were able to talk and recite poetry at the age of 3, and I was struggling with, basic speech. I guess that wasn't actually my fault. You see, my mom and dad worked day and night, and I was left with an old nanny who would watch TV for hours without saying a word. Therefore, I never really had someone to communicate with, and was largely left to fend for myself. As you may have already guessed, I wasn't a model student at school. Actually, the teachers often told me I was one of the worst students in my class. Well, I did manage to avoid corrective classes, so at least there's that. When I was 6, Dad started making some real money. Mom left work and became a housewife. I was so glad to receive some attention from her, finally. But she was so disgusted and horrified of me. She discussed the situation with Dad, and together they decided to make another child. A replacement, essentially, so as not to repeat their previous mistakes with me. And that's how my younger sister was born. Of course, she immediately received all of my parents' attention. Barbara wasn't that beautiful. Yeah, okay, she was cute and she had a sweet smile. When my sister was 3, she was already a fast talker, easily recited complex poetry, and was never really shy to talk to adults, and became, once and for all, my parents' favorite child. As for me, well, my whole family ended up bailing on me. Of course, Mom and Dad weren't complete monsters. They fed me and bought me clothes and other necessities, yet they tried to pretend that I didn't exist. They even sent my old nanny to a PTA meeting because they didn't want to go there themselves. Of course, the nanny diligently passed on the teacher's complaints to my parents. She never liked me either. Once I got older, I realized that the only person capable of helping myself was myself. Of course, I really wanted my parents to love and respect me. So I decided that I would start studying really hard. And that was not an easy task by any means, but at that point, I felt I had no other choice. So I dove headfirst into my studies. I spent all of my evenings at the local library, reading and learning new things, forcing my mind to broaden and to work harder. I cried a lot because I wasn't the brightest kid around, but I knew that I had no other choice, so I continued my ordeal. My hard work finally paid off after several years, when I was already a high school student. By that time, the teachers had finally acknowledged my success. They even held me up as an example. Unfortunately, my parents never paid any consideration to my successes. Mom and Dad continued to despise me. They already had Barbara, a smart, cute, and funny girl, so what was the point of me? They never stopped addressing me as a complete disappointment. Barbara was just a normal kid, but our parents congratulated themselves on each and every one of her accomplishments. Well, yeah, okay, she wasn't ugly or stupid, but she wasn't that bright either. You see, Mom and Dad were always on her side since birth and always helped her. Guess that was really the only reason of her not ending up like me. When I was in high school, that's when I fully realized that, essentially, I had no parents or relatives to help me. Good thing I was already a model student, and studies no longer seemed to be such a big problem for me. So I got a side job and used that money to improve my appearance. Regular exercise made me slim, and nice, albeit cheap, clothes and makeup actually made me quite attractive. Of course, I wasn't a looker or anything, but I wasn't a dog face anymore, so that was something. Some guys even legitimately found me attractive, and 1 or 2 even wanted to date me. I, however, didn't want to devote time to relationships. I wanted to enter a nice college and wanted to finally become free of my parents once and for all. Now, I'm 20 years old, and I've got everything I could have ever dreamt for. I study at a nice university, and I also have a small but quite successful business. I even have a photo studio of my very own. Some of the experts that I know say that I'm a talented photographer. Also, I even tried my hand at modeling for a bit, and it turns out that I'm quite good at it. I've got money, a flat of my own, a nice car, and finally, that long-awaited freedom. I'm finally free to be myself and do what only I want to do. Unfortunately, my parents still think that I'm a disappointment. They sometimes call me and ask me for money. They never ask how I live or how I feel or if I have any problems to discuss or not. They never offer help or advice. They only want my money. Lately, though, they really went overboard. You see, Mom and Dad literally demanded that I make Barbara a free portfolio. My sister and their beloved daughter really wants to become a model. And they honestly told me, Evelyn, you're a loser anyway, so you can at least fulfill your sister's dreams. So since then, I stopped taking their calls. I gave up on the whole idea of making peace with my family. They wished to get rid of me when I was a kid. Guess I'll fulfill their wishes on my own.
Hello, all. I'm Karen. mom of Barbara and Evelyn. Unfortunately, my elder daughter turned out to be ungrateful and cut me out of her life. My husband and I had our first child when both of us were too young. We really needed to build a career, to make some real money, so we devoted all of our time to work. And when I was finally free to take care of our kid, it was already too late. Evelyn was a totally lost cause. An ugly, quiet, and plain dumb girl horrified me. So my husband and I decided that it was too late to try and fix the situation with Evelyn, and had another kid. Barbara was the daughter of our dreams. She turned out to be a vibrant, funny, cute kid who loved smiling and was always glad to see me. With Barbara, I finally realized how great it was to be a mom. I liked catering to my youngest daughter's wishes. I enjoyed watching her grow. I loved her smile and her stories about kindergarten and school. I allowed her to join a number of school clubs, did everything in my power so that she'd have a prosperous future. And as for Evelyn, well, we didn't send her to an orphanage. We gave her food and shelter. She could have not asked for more. Of course, we never showed our firstborn kid to my friends or my husband's business partners. Evelyn was not the kid you could be proud of. So when someone came to our home, we usually asked her to never leave the confines of her room. Well, nobody really liked Evelyn anyway, so it was all for her own good. Besides, everybody really liked Barbara. She studied well, grew up quite a looker, and was able to maintain any conversation. Barbara was our pride and joy. We've even made a special display case for all her diplomas and achievements. And then Evelyn grew up, moved out, and began spreading horrible rumors. She told everyone that we literally held her on a chain in the basement. Her childhood was never like this. She grew up as a normal girl with toys and clothes and books, and a room of her own, like every other kid. And all her failures were completely her fault. She was born ugly and dumb. What could we possibly do to change that? These rumors damaged our reputation. We worked a lot to be nice parents and nice neighbors, and Evelyn's words undermined our efforts. So we started answering those that doubted us that Eve was a very ungrateful kid. We did everything for her. We fed her and taught her, and now she repaid us with lies? Good thing the girl never actually came home in person. Well, at least she sent us money when my husband ran into problems with his business. Some may say that it is wrong to take money from our own daughter. Still, we fed and clothed her when she was a kid, so she essentially just paid us back. Besides, Barbara needed nice clothes and new toys. Our little girl shouldn't be made to wait a lot. And then Barbara saw Evelyn on TV in some commercial. My little girl immediately decided that she wanted to become a professional model. So I called Evelyn and said that she should make Barbara a portfolio. After all, my little girl would be a much better model than Evelyn. Our eldest had no talent for modeling. You could tell that right away. She was a disgrace and a loser after all. Yet Evelyn disobeyed. She hung up on me and stopped taking my calls altogether. That's when I realized that Barbara was my only true daughter. We raised Evelyn like responsible parents, and she thanked us with rumors and lies.
Hi, guys and girls. I'm Carol, and my story is very strange. And frankly speaking, quite an intimate one. 2 years have passed since that moment, and I still can't really wrap my head around that. Yet it's all true, and moreover, it's connected with my parents. You see, sorry. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll try to tell you this one in order. So I grew up in a decent and wealthy family. My dad is a top manager of an IT company. My mom is a theater actress and my best friend. I really adored my parents, and they immeasurably loved me. I had everything a child can only dream of. Expensive dolls, newest computer games, best gadgets. I even had the latest iPhone when I was only 12. Dad gave me anything. We had vacations in exotic countries 5 or 6 times per year. He bought me dresses made by the greatest fashion designers. And I even had a chance to meet leading world stars. Once, for example, we went to Cannes, where I had to talk with Spider-Man himself. I can't remember the name of the actor, but I'm 100% sure you know his face. He's that very boy that everyone and their mother likes. I mean, my life was much like a fairy tale. And of course, I really loved inviting guests. Not only to brag about my riches, mind you. So let's get back to business. It was a regular Saturday. Parents went to visit their friend Karen. Mom and Dad knew they could trust me because I was already an adult. So I decided to call the girls to arrange a girls' party. To all the guys, yes. During our parties, we compare makeup, try on each other's clothes, chat, play and watch movies. And that girls' night wasn't going to be anything special. The girls' night was scheduled to happen at my place. So I put a lot of work into making it clean and as comfy as possible before they arrived. I took some of my mom's cosmetics, made sure that there was a cool film to watch, and so on and so forth. Good thing there was always fresh melodramas on my mom's laptop. And good thing I wasn't in charge of food. Margaret was the oldest of us. She was already 14 at the time, and she always was the one to order pizza. It was 5:30, and I already did everything. I brought my mom's notebook and some cosmetics to my room, cleaned up and dressed up. Just in time. Heather came early as usual. She's an honors student and an all-around good girl, so she hates being late. Karen came just in time, and Margaret, as always, arrived a half an hour late. The evening was going to be grand, as always. I really enjoyed the gathering, even despite the fact that Margie ordered sushi and I wanted pizza. Whatever. So we started to choose the film. I opened my mom's folder and got stunned. Unbeknownst to me, Mom downloaded 20+ new films last week. So my girls and I decided to watch each of them for 5 minutes or so and stop at the one that grabbed our attention. The first 3 films were utterly boring. The girls started yawning. Margie went to the bathroom. I was still going strong, however. The evenings just started after all. Everything was okay until I double-clicked one of the new files. It was the moment that divided my life into before and after the evening. At that particular point in time, I was just hoping that the girls wouldn't notice my twisted face. Well, yeah, I also hoped them not to remember my mom's and dad's faces. I never thought that my perfect, wonderful, glorious life would come to this. There was no introduction, no warning. The video straight out began with my parents' convulsing bodies shot full screen. I'm sure that each and every teacher at our school would pass out from such a show. If you think that my reaction is exaggerated, please take the following into account. I've literally never encountered anything like that before. Mom and Dad always asked me to close my eyes or leave the room altogether when there were any sensual scenes on TV. And at school, during sex ed lessons, I became pale and flushed by turns because I always felt ashamed about such things. And now I saw my own parents in their youth doing it in full HD. Just imagine the situation. It all happened right in my room. Mom's laptop was standing in the very center of my bed. There were 4 of us girls around it, and each of us saw the adult movie starring my mom and dad. I was shocked, and I couldn't say a thing. I was shaken out of it by Margie's laughter. Kate put her hands over her mouth, and Heather just turned away from the screen. I closed the laptop as fast as I could and looked at the girls with fear. Margie stopped laughing, and now all the girls were just sitting there, staring at me. I smiled, trying to calm all of us down, but my smile was crooked and didn't help. It seemed to me that they were sitting there for ages, until someone broke the spell by ringing the doorbell. The delivery guy brought sushi. I ran to the door, but Margie stopped me, asked to give her money, and went to talk to the guy herself. When Margie wasn't around, the girls tried to calm me down. Kate told me that all parents kept a repertoire of adult films. The adults supposedly found it useful to keep around. And Heather said that she herself discovered some homebrew adult videos made by her own parents 12 months before our incident. I felt like I could exhale a bit. The girls apparently didn't notice that those were my own parents on the screen. Everything went pretty much okay, but then Margie returned. That's when the worst part began. Margie asked me to switch on the film with your young parents as if nothing ever happened. and the girls immediately figured everything out. Margie continued talking about how hot my mom and dad were, and I realized that the evening was irrevocably spoiled. I asked the girls to leave it at once. Margie wanted to stay and even promised to never mention your nude parents ever again. I was sure that she never planned to keep her word, so I made all of them leave. You see, Mom and Dad were coming back in a day, and I had to somehow put myself back together before their return. At 9 p.m., I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep, so I switched Mom's laptop on again. Why, oh why did I do that? Yeah, I was hoping that the vid was just a mistake, some kind of youthful experiment. Well, I was mistaken. There were at least 5 such videos on my mom's laptop. I felt horrible. All that sensual stuff starring my own mom and dad. I couldn't even imagine facing them from then on. And how should I speak to them ever again? Everything changed. My life turned upside down, and it all felt awful. At 3 a.m., I still couldn't sleep. I decided to surf the internet for a change. Well, I should never have Googled Dad's name and surname and my mom's maiden name. Once again, I was shaken to the core. The whole web was full to the brim with adult films starring Mom and Dad. In shock, I tossed the laptop a meter away from me, almost breaking it into pieces. I spent several minutes catching my breath, then took it and carried it back into my parents' bedroom. Only then was I able to get some sleep. Parents arrived at 8 in the morning. Mom came into my room, sat down on the bed, and kissed me on the forehead, as she always did. This kiss used to wake me up, and I always hugged Mom in return. But now I had no idea how to react to that. I felt too scared to even look into her face, so I just leaned back into the pillow. Mom immediately felt that something was wrong. She called my name, and I just started crying and screaming. Through the tears, I accused her and Dad of debauchery. My whole life was just a lie. My parents weren't who they appeared to be, and I was quite possibly not their daughter. I just dumped all of that on her because I was hysterical. Mom never even moved during my outburst. After a while, she was joined by Dad, and both of them listened to my cries without any response. Finally, the outburst ended. I calmed down a bit, fell on the bed, and wrapped up in a blanket. Only then Mom broke the silence. She told me that she'd be waiting in the kitchen for me in 15 minutes. Then she got up, took Dad by the hand, and they left the room together. In 15 minutes, I was sitting in the kitchen, and my parents were telling me a story of their youth and poverty. I was trying so hard to understand them. But remember, I was only 12. I was shocked and in pain. After all, it's very hard for a kid to see his or her loved ones as an actors of an adult film. Yeah, they told me that it had been just a source of income in desperate times and nothing more. While I listened to their excuses, I was thinking of school and my friends. I really had no idea what to tell them. I didn't even know what they thought of me now. I imagined my future life as an outcast. You see, my friends were smart enough to Google my parents and receive the same results as I did. And it was horrible. Well, I could do nothing to prevent that, so I had to somehow endure that. There really was no choice. 2 years have passed since then. Funny thing is, everything was not that bad. Actually, I somehow became quite popular at school because of my parents. The fellow students even admired the passion and open-mindedness of my parents. What a joke! All is well that ends well, of course. But I still feel troubled because of that event. Mom did bring me to a therapist, but I just couldn't stand that, so I left after 2 weeks. And somehow I did feel better later, yet still something gnaws at me, and I don't know how to make it stop. And you?
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and my life is great. I own a large construction company that has been working flawlessly for several years. I earn a lot of money, have a swell apartment in addition to a house, and several expensive cars to boot. In short, I've got everything a modern businesswoman can only dream of. But my life wasn't always so flawless. Once, I was just a little girl who was lost and desperately needed her father's attention. Everything began many years ago. At the time, I was only 13. I've got a pretty nice family. My mom was a university professor, and my dad owned a large construction company of his own. I guess you could say it was in the family. A shrewd businessman, he wasn't fully satisfied with his success. He wanted more, and he had plans on how to do that. It seemed to me that we as a family all really loved each other, and that we had a strong family. Mom and Dad loved each other, and both of them loved me. Dad always sent us to various resorts, and we've been to almost all the beautiful countries in the world. I was sure that my life was a paradise. The only thing that really bothered me was the constant absence of Dad. He used to book trips for two, me and my mom. He always said that he had a lot of work to do, and that there was no time for such frivolities. But one day I finally realized that that was not the case. I remember that I saw them on my way back home from school one day. I was walking past my favorite cafe. I looked inside and was stunned. I saw my dad, wealthy and handsome, sitting there, having some nice tea with a young girl. He must have been making jokes since she kept bursting out into laughter. It was as if I had received a tub of cold water right to my face. But I still tried to throw away the thoughts that immediately crossed my mind. I told myself that it was just my father's colleague whom he was treating to dinner. So I went home and knocked on the door. Mom opened it. I looked into her face and I realized that she had gotten older, and I felt that there was a storm brewing. It turned out that she had already known everything, yet she was still hoping that Dad's relationship with that girl wasn't serious. Unfortunately, Mom was gravely mistaken. At home, I described to her what Dad's date looked like with that stranger. Mom and Dad had a talk that evening, and Dad made a decision. He decided to dump us both because he didn't want to spend neither time nor money on us anymore. Mom and Dad had a huge fight, and then my father left the house and never returned. He made regular alimony payments, trying to buy us off with money. Sometimes he sent toys and some vouchers, but I craved his attention. He didn't want to give me any of that. You see, I still, or at least I did, really love my dad. And he just threw me and my mom away like we were trash, and I haven't seen him for many years after he left. Time flew by. I grew up. I started a building firm of my own. Now my company is a market leader. And a few months ago, my dad returned into my life all of a sudden. He tried to get a job at my company. He didn't even know that I was the company's owner. But when I looked through his documents, I was stunned. It was all pretty weird. Once my father had a construction company of his very own, and now he wants to work for me as a simple foreman. Well, I was kind of glad that he decided to get a job at my company. Now I can have my vengeance. You see, I'm still single. Thanks to him, I'm terribly afraid of men's treachery. And my therapist told me that my fear was born when my dad left the family. Each day he's forced to be audited. He's often sent to inspect construction sites despite his late age. Father's constantly making attempts to arrange a meeting with me face to face, yet I've given him no opportunity to do so. He is here to work, not to talk. He's got a crapload of tasks to do. I don't care that it's hard to do all those as an aged man. He has to cope well, otherwise he'd lose his job, and that's it. You see, my mother is in the hospital. She's been there for several years now, because of a mental disorder. It was him who made her suffer, and I won't let him get away with that. No. He ought to pay for everything that he's done to us. Every time I see him resting, I send a secretary with a new task. I watch how my father gets up, sighs heavily, brushes his gray hair, and moves on with another assignment. His eyes are tired. He must have given up. Perfect. Now he has no choice but to answer for the sins that he's committed. I feel like I can do anything to him, and I abuse my powers gladly. Still, he's really the one to blame here. He hurt my mom and I, and now he must atone for his sins by doing heavy labor. Once I even forced him to lay bricks at a construction site, as several builders quit. Well, it was me who fired them beforehand so that my father could suffer even more. He was used to living like a king. Now he's got a lot to answer to. He says he's got a lot of tasks to do, and he can't cope with those. So I cut his salary and let him go with no bonus. Furthermore, I reprimanded him in front of his co-workers at the staff meeting. It's construction business, after all. You either do what you've been ordered to, or you suffer. What do you think about my actions? As for me, I consider them justified. Father left me and my mom when we needed him the most. When I needed him the most, he tried to buy me off with money. And now his past has finally caught up to him.
My greetings. I'm George, Rebecca's father, and recently I learned that now I work for my own daughter. Once I had a construction company myself, and now my girl owns the most prominent construction company in our country. Guess that runs in our family. I'm really proud that I raised such a daughter. An extraordinate success. Well, yeah, I left the family many years ago. Somehow I lost contact with my daughter, yet I always tried to remember her. Besides, I didn't stop caring about her even after I left her mom. I wasn't exactly the greatest dad, I must admit. Yet I really tried to provide for Rebecca and her mom. Even when I was her mother's husband, I allowed them to travel anywhere in the world. My girl experienced so much, saw so many miracles, and I really paid for all their expenses. I took care of my daughter, only up to a certain age, of course. I don't really think she still needed me when she became 13, though. She was already a teenager, ready to live a life of her own. Moreover, she always had a mother. Her mom provided Rebecca with all the emotional support she'd ever need. Even then, I never stopped sending them alimony payments. I also bought toys and gadgets for my daughter, and I even sent them vouchers. Perfect life if you ask me. I'm sure I did a lot for my daughter. She even decided to start her own business because she had me as a living example. Besides, she inherited all my best character traits. She's just a fragile girl, and she's able to lead a construction business better than any man. Yet now, I've lost everything, and I have to start everything from scratch. Funny thing is, my second wife ruined me. That charming young lady took over my business and almost all of my real estate. She really outsmarted me, because I apparently got too old and ugly for her liking. I loved her so much. I idolized her. I literally carried her in my arms. Yet she repaid my kindness very poorly. I'm too old to start another business. Still, I have to make a living somehow. I don't want anything fancy, just a small flat, a steady paycheck, and some food to put on the table, nothing more. And my own daughter decided to ruin me even further. But Rebecca only makes my life much harder. She gives me too much work. I simply can't handle that, and each evening I come home extremely tired. And I'm not a young man, after all. I haven't got much energy left. And to think that I was so glad when I learned that I worked for my own daughter. I was sure that my life would be smooth sailing, yet Rebecca never actually met with me. She doesn't even want to talk to me by phone, despite me calling her multiple times every day. Funny thing is, I receive all my tasks directly from her, albeit through the secretary. What's wrong with her? Why is she so angry at me? Why doesn't she want to talk to her own father? All our conflicts are the things of the past. I'm ready to pay her as much attention as she wants now, yet she doesn't even want to make even the slightest contact with me. I can't really work for my daughter's company anymore. I just have to get Rebecca to talk. I have to explain everything to her. I had to tell her about the conditions I currently live in. But I don't have any way to make contact with my own daughter. All my coworkers are afraid of her, and no one will even tell me her address. What should I do now? Should I still try to make contact with my daughter and have a talk with her? Or should I just resign and search for my own place in life from now on? What would you advise, Rebecca? Would you try to forgive your father? And what would you do if you were George? Tell us in the comments section below and subscribe to our channel for new interesting stories.